sauce and drinks. How did that happen? I want the drinks now. But it's been an amazing 2 days, as you can imagine, of connections, passion, innovation, inspiration. And I really wanted to give a big shout out, and please join me in congratulating Avenue Code, Uliana, Jessica, Raviman, Carolina. I'm probably missing out a few people, but amazing conference. And thank you so much for the opportunity to come here and talk to you about something that I feel really passionate about, and I think this is very relevant in today's world, which is leading with the strength of kindness. We might think, oh, where's my prompter? I actually left it down there, so let me go get it so I can navigate this. So, we all have different conceptions and possible misconceptions about kindness. Earlier on in my career, there was a time when I was doing my product management job with utmost hard work and sincerity, but for a myriad of reasons, I was just not able to create the impact that I wanted to. And neither was the company able to get the kind of impact that it wanted out of me. I was being shopped around in different groups. I was miserable. Until one day, one of my leaders pulled me aside and she said, "Why are you doing this to yourself? Why don't you leave the company?" And at that time, it was a harsh and bitter pill to accept. But looking back, I think that was an act of kindness that I feel deeply grateful for. In fact, she remains one of my biggest mentors because without that clarity, I would not have had the opportunity to go out, explore other options, and really think about paving the career that I wanted to, and probably not even being here today. So I'm grateful for that, for that strength that she actually brought to the table and showed me the clarity in terms of what I needed to do. And this is possibly one of the biggest misconceptions I think we have about kindness. We all know and believe that vulnerability, compassion is kind. We all assume that if you're kind, you're nice, you're non-threatening. But there is another dimension to kindness that I would love to talk to you about today, which is about strength, which is about conviction, and which is about possible conflict. But in the bigger scheme of things, the combination of both of those are what we need as women and in technology and in the world today. So are you all with me to break down some of these myths of kindness? All right, wow, cool, very cool. So me and Nariman, introduced me. I'm the Vice President of Product at a digital sports company called Fanatics. Spent about a couple of decades in technology, about a dozen doing product management. I love to, outside of my day job, work with entrepreneurs who have great ideas. So I teach at product school, I am a product mentor at 2 startup accelerators, and I'm also dabbling with angel investing. So if you have any ideas, I'd love to speak to you about them. So that's just a little bit about me. And about the company where I am, Fanatics, we're most commonly known for our sports merch. So if anybody out there, sports fans who have bought any sports merchandise, thank you so much. Baseball season is on, so hopefully you're going. And we're not just known for sports merch, we are actually in collectibles, betting, gaming. With that comes the foray into NFT and things like that. So we're hiring across the board. Anybody who's interested in Fanatics would love to talk to you if this is a good fit or not. So moving on, it's a bit serendipitous how I selected this topic because I think it's very relevant today for us in technology and for women specifically. Did you know that women make up 39% of the workforce, but account for 55% of all the job losses, and is projected to rise during COVID? And post-COVID, if there is life after COVID, I'm still adjusting. Combined with that, jobs held by women are 1.5 times more at risk of losing than jobs held by men. So who are all here who are returning from WFH to RTO and RTH? Who are all going through that process right now? A few of us. That's interesting. Actually, many of my friends are going through this process of going back from working from home to returning to hybrid or returning to the office. If you imagine this, this is possibly one of the most complex and transformative workforce changes that is happening right now. It was, in fact, a tad easier to send everybody to work from home than bring everybody back and do it in different ways and means. And why this is important is because we are all in the midst of that. We're either making these decisions or taking in and receiving these decisions. And what is interesting about this is that, at work right now, we're crafting a return to hybrid strategy, and it's very complex. I feel my job is not for blanket policy per se, of course, to be able to support that, but also to think about that mother with a young toddler who might not want to send her child to daycare and might not be able to come to the office, whether it is for health or financial reasons, and to be able to craft something a little bit more flexible. So I think we all right now can play a part in what is happening right now in terms of this transformative workforce movement right now that is happening. And especially for us as women, because our jobs are more vulnerable than others. So to stand together, to be able to make those decisions, receive those decisions, give feedback, I think is so important right now that I would love to talk to you a little bit more about. So I want to talk to you about 4 topics on kindness and strength. And you might think they're opposite, but actually, I want to convince you that they actually go together. The first thing is that you don't have to be an executive to lead with kindness. You don't need a title. What I always keep going back to is, there's this product manager on my team. She's 2 years out of college. She works with business and engineering stakeholders who are decades ahead in terms of the number of experience that they actually have. But she always comes into the conversation with the intent to learn, with wide open eyes, and asks a lot of questions, and asks tough questions on why things are the way they are. And when I talk to some of those business stakeholders who work with her, they say, my gosh, she really asks tough questions, but we understand because she's coming with the intent to learn, and she really brings out the best in us. And I've sat in some of her meetings, and I've learned just the power of learning and asking questions, and not being afraid to ask the tough questions in whatever setting you are in. So this is an example that I take back to myself a lot. You don't have to be a vice president of product or anybody with a title to lead with kindness. You can do this every day in your work. Just don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. The second is connection before correction. This was the best parenting advice, by the way, that I got. I am a mom to a completely goofy 8-year-old boy, and some moms can empathize with me. It is impossible to do math homework. So thank you. I feel the empathy and connection. And there were days when I kept addressing the math homework and it would not get done, or it would get done with too much conflict. And then it really came back to the basics in terms of, let's put the math homework aside, but before that, let's talk about how things are at school. Let's talk about that incident, with that friend last week and all the back and forth that you've had and how that's evolved. And I find that building the math homework on top of that, I've had much more success with the math homework. So the key is to not lose sight of the math homework, but to be able to do that with a sense of kindness and a foundation of connection. Because at the end of the day, we are all human. We all want to feel connected, to feel that we belong, to feel like we can make a difference. And good leaders are not only able to communicate their ideas with passion, but also form a connection with the audience. If you take modern day, there are some managerial theories that actually say the more senior you are, the more psychological distance you should actually build with your team, because for your own safety and security. Society in itself places a lot of emphasis on leaders who are charismatic, who influence through personality. We call them dynamic, we follow them. Media portrays them as, the best CEOs. But is that enough to be a leader? I personally don't think so. While leaders need to have that communication ability to be able to communicate thoughts and actions clearly and succinctly, it really comes down to that connection that you're able to have with your audience and your teams, for instance, for you to be able to sell your vision and to be able to rally a team to execute against that vision. So this parenting advice for me has served so well at work, and I thought it could be interesting to talk about this here. The third one is that being firm is actually being kind. And being firm, especially as a woman, let me tell you, is not a very popular thing. People don't take kindly to it. You are given labels like being stubborn, or in fact even being arrogant. But if you have the data to back it up, I have noticed that I think when I'm being firm and without any fear, I think those are my moments where I feel I'm able to express myself in a way that is true to me and also up-level kind of the team and the organization. So for example, I see this manifesting a lot in hiring decisions. I come from a very traditional product management background. I was a software engineer, did my MBA, and then did product management. I mean, quite a classic, kind of like a product management background. And I remember working in companies which favored people of that background. But there was one person that I interviewed, and I still remember this, about a decade ago. And he actually had a music background, music education, and had an investment banking background. He interviewed brilliantly, so had all the data points, but still the team was very divided in terms of whether to hire him or not. And so at that point of time, I had to make a decision. The popular decision would have been to not hire him. But when I looked at the data, when I looked at all of the potential that he had, also spent a lot of time with him, I think I took a chance to be able to really help this person, break into product management, if you may. And 10 years later, we don't work together right now. We worked together for the first 2-3 years that I hired him for. He remains one of my best product managers with the greatest ability to be able to be analytical and creative. And these are two very difficult things to be able to achieve at work. So being firm, I think, is kind. Because when you have the data to back it up, and when you operate without fear, you're able to up-level yourself, your team, and your organization as a whole. And lastly, being clear is kind. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have been told to soften down performance feedback. Don't give that feedback like that. You will be considered rude. It will not go down well. It might be perceived as unfair. That person might leave the company. But I truly believe that when you come from a place where you want to see the other person succeed and grow, having things under the carpet is actually being unkind and being unfair. If that leader hadn't pulled me aside and opened my eyes to, why are you here? Why don't you leave the company? Clearly it's not working. I wouldn't have been exposed to the opportunities that came out outside of that. So being clear is being kind. And you know what? It's not a popularity contest. That's a whole other talk in terms of not being part of a popularity contest. We'll go there sometime. So I wanted to talk about, kind of like while summarizing this, how many of you have read Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister's book, Leading with Empathy? Anybody? If you haven't, please do, because it's a great book. We all have heard, hopefully, stories of how she operated during COVID. She shut down her country. She made some very unpopular decisions for the economy, if you may. But coming out of, COVID, quote unquote, she is hailed as one of the better leaders in terms of showing strength, conviction, and kindness and empathy. And in her book, she says, I think one of the sad things that I have seen in political leadership is because we've placed over time so much emphasis on notions of assertiveness and strength that we probably have assumed that means you can't have the qualities of kindness and empathy in tandem. And yet, when you think about all of the big challenges that we face in the world today, that's probably the combination of the qualities that we all need the most. So the 4 things that I want to leave you with is you don't have to be a leader to lead with kindness. Connection before correction, because we are all human and crave that. Being firm and being clear is being kind. So, we all spend so much time at work. Work is such a big part of our lives. I believe this combination of being kind and being strong and being clear is a path forward for us to really improve productivity, performance, and joy at work. So hopefully I've been able to convince you that kindness is layered, and hopefully you're not afraid to try out some strength tactics with also being kind. Not only for yourself, but your teams, your organizations, and your community. Thank you so much for your time.